I hadn't planned on stopping by Madison's that night. It was one of those restless evenings where the hours stretch out and you get tired of your own company. I had wrapped up work earlier than expected, and instead of heading home, I found myself behind the wheel, half listening to the radio, half lost in thoughts I didn't want to unpack. I hadn't seen her in a few days. Texts here and there, a phone call the night before, enough to keep the pulse of the relationship steady, but not enough to feel connected. We'd been dating for almost 2 years, and for a long time, I thought we were headed somewhere real. Something stable, something future-bound. We talked about moving in together. Marriage had even come up once, on a wine-soaked night when neither of us had the filter to brush it off. So yeah, showing up unannounced might have been bold. But in my mind, it wasn't unreasonable. I had done it before. She always smiled, always pulled me inside like I belonged there. That night, I figured I'd swing by with her favorite almond croissants from that 24-hour bakery she loved on 9th. No occasion, just a spontaneous kind of affection I hoped would mean something. But as I turned the corner to her street and pulled into an open space half a block down, something started to nag at me. An uneasiness I couldn't name. Maybe it was the silence on the drive. Maybe it was the way she'd sounded distracted on the phone earlier that day. Or maybe some part of me already knew what I was about to walk into. I stepped out, croissant box in hand, and started toward her building. The sidewalk was quiet. A warm breeze rustled the trees lining the street, and every other window in her building glowed soft yellow, except hers, which was drawn tight behind a thin curtain. But the light was on. And as I got closer, something stopped me in my tracks. I looked up just out of habit, and there, behind that curtain, I saw it. A silhouette, a man, tall, broad shoulders, moving with familiarity, like he wasn't in a rush to leave. He walked across the room and disappeared into the darker part of the apartment. No sounds, no laughter, no conversation, just silence. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, staring up like a fool. My heart thumped like it knew something my brain refused to accept. I blinked, waited. Nothing. The shadow didn't return. I told myself I had imagined it, that the curtain had moved, or maybe it was her walking by with her coat. Or a neighbor. She'd once mentioned her friend Jesse who lived a floor down. Maybe he was helping her fix something? But even then, I didn't believe it. Not really. Still, I walked up to the entrance and buzzed her apartment. After a few seconds, her voice came through the speaker, slightly breathless. "Hey, Ethan?" "Hey," I said, forcing a smile she couldn't see. "Hope I'm not crashing anything." "No, not at all," she said quickly. "Come on up." Her voice held a brightness, a casual ease. Too casual. I tried not to read into it, but when you've known someone as long as I've known Madison, you start to hear the things they're not saying. She opened the door before I even knocked. She was barefoot, hair tied loosely, wearing one of those oversized sweaters she always wore around the house. She looked comfortable. Too comfortable for someone who'd had company a minute ago. I stepped inside. She gave me a quick kiss, then backed up and gave the box a curious smile. "Almond croissants?" she asked, already walking toward the kitchen. "You're gonna spoil me." "That's kind of the point," I said, but my eyes were already scanning the room. Nothing unusual. Couch pillows a little out of place, a throw blanket tossed over the armrest, candles burning, a record player in the corner turned off. Then I saw them. 2 wine glasses on the coffee table. One was nearly empty. The other was still half full. Madison saw where I was looking and spoke quickly. "Oh, I had a glass while I was cleaning up," she said, breezing past me as if the second glass didn't exist. "You want one? There's more in the bottle." I hesitated, then shook my head. "Nah, I'm good." She didn't look me in the eye, just grabbed a croissant and started nibbling at it. The silence filled the room like fog, but she acted like nothing was off, like this was just another night. No big deal. I stood there, still gripping the pastry box, feeling like a stranger in a place I used to feel at home in. "You okay?" she asked after a moment, smiling faintly. "Yeah, just tired." I lied. We sat on the couch. She curled her legs under her, leaned her head on my shoulder like always. But it didn't feel like always. It felt staged, polished. The apartment didn't smell like her usual vanilla-scented candles. It smelled different. Something sharper. Muskier. A cologne I didn't recognize lingered in the air, just faint enough to be missed if you weren't already suspicious. As we watched some random show she put on for background noise, I couldn't stop glancing at that half-full glass. She never finished it. Didn't pour more. Didn't touch it. And I noticed how she kept checking her phone, subtly glancing down whenever the screen lit up before flipping it over again. She wasn't doing it on purpose, I could tell. It was habit, like someone waiting for a follow-up message. I thought about asking her. I almost did twice, but every time I opened my mouth, I saw her smile, and it made me hesitate. Because if I was wrong, if I was overthinking, if I was just paranoid, I'd be the insecure boyfriend who didn't trust her. And I didn't want to be that guy. Not with her. So I stayed quiet. That night I stayed over. She pulled me close under the blankets, like always, ran her fingers through my hair until I drifted off. And for a while I convinced myself it was okay, that I was reading too much into a silhouette and a second glass of wine. But sometime past 2 a.m., I woke up. She was still asleep beside me, breathing softly, her hand resting on my chest. And I stared at the ceiling, wide-eyed, heart pounding, completely awake. Because no matter how warm she was beside me, the apartment still smelled like him. And the second glass was still sitting on the coffee table, untouched, waiting for someone who was never supposed to be seen. After that night at Madison's apartment, something in me shifted. It wasn't a full-blown collapse, more like a quiet fracture. The kind you pretend not to notice because it's easier to live with a crack than face what it might become. I told myself over and over that I had no proof, no reason to doubt her, just a silhouette and a wine glass, just a feeling. But sometimes, feelings are louder than facts. First, I tried to brush it off. I went back to my routine: work, gym, dinner, sleep, sprinkled with texts from her during the day and the occasional phone call at night. She still said all the right things, still laughed at my jokes, still sent photos of her coffee when she visited that indie cafe downtown. But the warmth had cooled, started small, subtle things, a delay in her replies, shorter phone calls, fewer invitations to come over. She claimed work had picked up, tight deadlines, new clients, her manager breathing down her neck. And I wanted to believe her. Madison was ambitious, dedicated. I'd always admired that about her. But she'd never been disorganized. She was the type who planned out her week on Sunday night, color-coded calendar and all. Now, she'd cancel dinner last minute, saying she lost track of time or had to finish something for the office. Once or twice. Fine. Life happens. But it became a pattern. One Thursday, I stopped by to drop off her coat, which she'd left in my car over the weekend. I didn't tell her I was coming. I figured I'd just leave it at the door. As I reached her building, I saw her just outside the entrance, standing on the sidewalk, facing away. She was talking to someone, a man. I didn't recognize him from behind, but I caught the way her body leaned in, just slightly. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the way she smiled. Not the kind of smile you give a coworker. When she spotted me, she jumped a little, like she'd been caught mid-thought. "Ethan," she called, forcing a cheerful tone. "What are you doing here?" I held up the coat. "Just dropping this off." She nodded quickly, took a few steps toward me. The guy behind her mumbled something and turned away, walking down the street before I could get a good look at him. "Who was that?" I asked. She blinked. "Oh, just someone from work. Jamie. He's new on the team." "Jamie," I repeated. "Didn't look like a Jamie." She laughed it off. "Trust me. Total nerd. We were just talking about some project we're stuck on." I didn't press it, but that moment sat in the back of my mind, like a box I didn't want to open yet. Later that weekend, she stayed over at my place. It should have felt normal, easy. Instead, it felt like walking through a room where someone had just been arguing. Everything was quiet, but the air was charged. She left early the next morning, saying she had brunch with her sister. I believed her until I saw her makeup bag still sitting on the bathroom counter. Madison never left without it. That's when I noticed the scent lingering on her hoodie. Cologne. Not mine. That was the second time. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe she borrowed a jacket from someone. Maybe it was from a cab driver or a hug from a friend. But the lies we tell ourselves to avoid pain, they're never sustainable. A few days later, I spotted a receipt in the back of her car when she asked me to grab her phone charger from the glove compartment. It was tucked into a small pile of napkins and old receipts. This one stood out. An upscale restaurant. One we'd never been to together. The date? 2 nights earlier. I remembered that night. She had texted me around 9 p.m., said she was wiped and going to sleep early. She even sent a blurry photo of her couch and a glass of tea. I held the receipt in my hand like it was radioactive. I didn't take it, didn't ask her about it, just slid it back under the napkins like I hadn't seen it. I felt pathetic. The next time I was at her place, I noticed her phone was always face down. She used to be careless about it. Left it on the couch, let it buzz openly during dinner. Now it was always screen side down. Sometimes, when it buzzed, she'd casually glance at it, then flip it over again without replying. At night, I heard it vibrate while she was in the bathroom. I caught the way she sighed when she saw whatever message had come through. I didn't ask. Not yet, because some part of me didn't want to know. But the biggest change wasn't the phone, or the canceled plans, or the guy on the sidewalk. It was her perfume. For most of our relationship, Madison wore this soft, floral scent. Something subtle, comforting, familiar. But one evening, when I leaned in to kiss her neck, it was different. Sharp, almost spicy, masculine even. I pulled back slightly. "You change your perfume?" She hesitated for just a second before nodding. "Yeah." The other one ran out. Figured I'd try something new. I smiled and kissed her again, but the scent burned like truth. It wasn't hers. Not really. It clung to her skin like an afterthought. That night, I dreamt I was standing outside her apartment again, watching the same shadow walk across the living room. Only this time, he stopped at the window and looked directly at me. I woke up in a sweat. For days, I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was letting doubt corrode something good, that relationships go through phases and people get busy, and sometimes you just fall out of sync for a while. But nothing about this felt like misalignment, felt like secrets. Still, whenever I tried to bring something up, Madison had a way of turning the conversation on its head. One afternoon, while we were walking back from the bookstore, I asked her if she still felt good about where we were. Us. The relationship. She paused, then shrugged. "I mean, things feel a little tense lately. You've been distant." "Me?" I asked, genuinely confused. "Yeah," she said, brushing her hair from her face. "You've been asking weird questions, giving me these looks. It's like you don't trust me." I opened my mouth to respond, but she was already ahead of me, walking faster. It was subtle but effective. The conversation was closed. She was good at that, redirecting, reframing. She never raised her voice, never argued, just made me question my own reactions. And I hated that it worked, because even as I added up the wine glass, the cologne, the secretive texts, the canceled dinners, and the lies buried under white lies, I couldn't shake the feeling that if I pushed too hard, she'd slip away completely. And I wasn't ready for that. So I kept playing the part. The supportive boyfriend. The trusting partner. But under the surface, my mind had started keeping score. And the tally wasn't looking good. I didn't plan on being there. The cafe wasn't even one I normally stopped at. I was supposed to meet a client across town. But the meeting got pushed last minute. And I had an hour to K***L. I figured I'd grab a coffee and answer a few emails. That's it. Funny how the smallest decisions become the turning point. It was a quiet little place. Dim lighting, indie music playing too softly to recognize, shelves of used books stacked near the windows. I ordered an iced coffee and took a seat by the corner window, away from the noise. I remember thinking how peaceful it felt. Then I heard her voice. At first, I didn't even register it. It was just background chatter, a murmur I'd heard 1,000 times. But something in my chest responded before my brain did. A familiarity that made me sit up straighter. I looked over my shoulder, and there she was, Madison. She hadn't seen me. Her back was half turned, seated at a round table with 3 other women. I recognized one of them vaguely, her coworker, I think. The other 2 were strangers. She looked relaxed, happy even, laughing in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. I told myself to leave. I shouldn't eavesdrop. This wasn't healthy. But I stayed. I stayed because something in my gut told me to. The more I listened, the more I realized they weren't just catching up. They were venting. Madison had her coffee in one hand, gesturing with the other as she talked. I mean, Ethan's great. Don't get me wrong, she said, and I froze. He's just comfortable, you know? Like, if nothing better comes along, sure, he's safe. One of the girls leaned in. But what about the guy you mentioned last time? Wasn't that getting serious? Madison smiled, took a sip, then shrugged. It is. Or it could be. I'm just waiting to see if he makes the move. He's different. My heart thudded so loud I was afraid someone would hear it. I gripped my cup so tightly I thought the plastic would crack. The words she spoke weren't angry. They weren't said in frustration or spite. That's what made them worse. They were casual, carefree, like she was talking about choosing between 2 outfits, not 2 people. I just don't want to waste time, she went on. Ethan's nice, but he's not it. You know what I mean? The woman across from her nodded sympathetically. Totally, like a placeholder. Madison didn't correct her. She just laughed. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. Not because she was cheating, though I still wasn't sure if that was true, but because she'd made a whole persona out of me. I wasn't her person. I wasn't her future. I was her safety net. And I hadn't even known I was falling. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just sat there, frozen, while they moved on to another topic. I watched her smile, lean into her coffee, glance at her phone and type something quickly. Maybe to him. Maybe a joke about what she just said. I felt sick. Part of me wanted to walk over right then and there, to make her see me, to watch her face as she realized I had heard every word. But I didn't. I stood up, slowly, quietly, and slipped out the side exit. The street outside felt unreal, like the world was too loud, too fast, too bright. People passed me by, oblivious. Cars honked. Somewhere nearby a busker strummed a guitar. The city went on while I unraveled. I walked aimlessly for almost an hour. Everything felt like a lie. Our conversations, our nights in, the future we'd painted. I thought of the wine glass, the cologne, the canceled plans. All of it made sense now, not as isolated moments, but as signs I had chosen to ignore. I had seen the trail of breadcrumbs, and still followed her blindly. Because I loved her. I loved her enough to doubt myself before I doubted her. And maybe that was the worst part. I kept thinking back to what she said. He's safe. Like I was some fallback plan. Like I was a sturdy couch she kept around until she could afford something better. And the worst part? I would have married her. I would have gotten down on one knee, poured every bit of myself into a life with her, while she was quietly waiting for someone else to say the right words. And the other guy, the one she called different, I didn't know who he was. A coworker? A stranger from a bar? Whoever he was, he had something I didn't. Or maybe not. Maybe he was just new, shiny, exciting. Maybe I was just the guy you keep around until the lease on your loneliness runs out. By the time I made it back to my car, I was numb. I sat behind the wheel and stared out at nothing. My phone buzzed. A message from Madison. Hey babe, just finished coffee with the girls. Miss you. Want to hang later? I stared at it, reread it. My hands shook. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I didn't trust myself not to say something I'd regret. She had no idea I'd heard her. No idea I knew the truth. And part of me wanted to keep it that way for just a little longer, because confronting her meant ending it. And even though I knew I had to, I wasn't ready. Not yet. I drove home, parked in the same spot I always did, stepped into my apartment like everything was normal. I sat on the edge of the bed, shoes still on, staring at the floor. All I could think was, she doesn't love me. Not really. She never did. Not in the way I loved her. Maybe she cared. Maybe she liked the comfort I gave, the safety, the familiarity. But love? The kind that anchors you when things fall apart? That wasn't what I was to her. I was the warm body she kept beside her until someone else chose her. And the thing that burned the most? She wasn't even hiding it anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed with the lights off, staring at the ceiling like it held some kind of answer. My body was still, but my mind, it was racing, spiraling, looping through every memory I had of Madison. Every kiss, every smile, every late-night phone call when we used to talk about the future like it was a promise. Now, those moments felt like borrowed time. Like I'd been living someone else's story and only just now found out I wasn't the main character. The words she said at the cafe kept echoing in my head. Ethan's nice, but he's not it. A placeholder. If nothing better comes along. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the calmness in her voice. The way she reduced me to a plan B like I was an option on a menu, not a person. No emotion, no guilt, just a clinical assessment of my worth. I tried to cry. I really did. But nothing came out. It was like my body had gone into some kind of lockdown, trying to protect itself from short-circuiting. So I lay there, flat on my back, feeling everything and nothing all at once. In the morning, I moved like a ghost. I didn't eat, didn't shower, didn't even check my phone, though it buzzed several times. Her name lit up my screen again and again, each message more casual than the last. Hope you slept okay, Redheart. Wanna do sushi tonight? Everything good? I almost laughed. How could she send hearts and sushi emojis like we were still okay? How could she look me in the eye, tell me she missed me, and then go out and call me safe to her friends? What kind of person compartmentalized like that? I didn't answer. Instead, I grabbed my jacket and walked. No destination, no plan. I just needed to move, to put distance between me and the apartment, between me and the pain. It was cold outside. Not freezing, but sharp enough to sting. I welcomed it. The sting was proof I could still feel something real, something that wasn't coated in lies. I passed people on the street, couples mostly, holding hands, laughing. One girl leaned her head on a guy's shoulder, and it hit me so hard I had to stop walking. That used to be us. I remembered how Madison would do that exact thing. Lean into me when she was tired or just wanted to be close. I used to think it meant safety, that I made her feel protected. Now I realized it was just familiarity, pattern she hadn't yet replaced. After about an hour of wandering, I found myself in front of her apartment building. I hadn't meant to go there. I didn't even remember turning in that direction. But there I was, standing across the street, staring at the window where I'd first seen the shadow of a man and pretended it meant nothing. I don't know what I was hoping for. Maybe I expected to see her. Maybe I thought she'd come outside and somehow, magically, explain it all away. But I stayed on the sidewalk, unmoving, invisible, watching a window like it held some kind of closure. Eventually, I turned around and walked back home. When I got inside, the silence was unbearable. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened the bottom drawer of my nightstand. Inside was a small black box, velvet, square, familiar. I'd bought the ring 3 months ago. Hadn't told anyone. I wanted it to be a surprise. The proposal was supposed to happen on our weekend trip next month. Cabin in the mountains, fireplace, snow outside, wine inside. I had the whole thing planned down to the music. I imagined her saying yes, imagined her crying, imagined us calling our families afterward. I imagined everything except this. I opened the box now, slowly. The ring gleamed against the dark velvet like it didn't know what it represented anymore. I stared at it for a long time. I had bought that ring with love, with certainty. Now I couldn't even look at it without feeling nauseous. I snapped the box shut and dropped it back in the drawer like it burned. The truth was undeniable now. And yet, there was still a part of me, deep down, that wanted to give her a chance to explain. Not because I believed there was a good explanation, there wasn't, but because some part of me still didn't know how to live without her. I'd built a future in my head. A house, kids, weekend coffee runs, arguing about curtains, late-night groceries, bills with both our names on them. Now I was realizing none of that was mutual. I had been in a relationship with the idea of her. The version of Madison who looked at me like I was her person. That version never existed. At least not in the way I thought. And now I was just the guy she kept around while she waited for something shinier to make a move. I thought about texting her, about calling her, about saying, "I know what you said. I heard everything." Just putting it all out there and letting it burn. But I didn't, because I wasn't ready. I didn't want to give her the chance to lie again. Or worse, to gaslight me into thinking I misunderstood. That I overreacted. That I took it out of context. I didn't want to hear her say, "It didn't mean anything," because that would be the final insult. Because it did mean something. Because she meant everything to me. I spent the rest of the day like a machine. Didn't talk to anyone. Didn't return texts. Just made coffee, poured it, didn't drink it. Just stared at the cup until it got cold. At some point, I found myself looking at our photos on my phone. Scroll after scroll, trips, dinners, movie nights, beach days. Her smile in every one of them. My arm around her waist. Her head on my shoulder. She looked happy. But now I couldn't unsee it. The way she sometimes leaned away instead of into me. The way her eyes occasionally wandered. The stiffness in her posture when I talked about things like buying a house, starting a family. The signs had always been there. I had just refused to see them. Because when you love someone, you don't look for the exits. You build walls, not windows. But she'd been looking for a door the entire time. By the time night fell, I felt hollow. Like my body had used up all its grief and didn't know what came next. I didn't eat. Didn't turn on the TV. Just lay in bed, staring again. The silence in the room was different now. Before, it had been filled with hope, expectation, comfort. Now it was just silence. Total. Complete. Empty. The messages started the next morning. First, just a few. "Hey, haven't heard from you. Are you okay? Did I do something wrong?" I ignored them. Not because I didn't have things to say, I had too much. I just didn't trust myself to speak without unraveling. The kind of anger I felt was the quiet kind. The kind that sits in your chest like stone. I wasn't ready to release it. Not yet. But by the afternoon, the tone shifted. "Ethan, seriously, what's going on? You're scaring me. Please just talk to me." I sat on the edge of the bed, reading each message like I was studying evidence. There was a desperation growing in her words that hadn't been there before. But it wasn't fear of losing me. It was fear of being caught. I knew that now. That night she called. I didn't answer. The screen lit up with her name, her picture. Us smiling at a vineyard last fall. I let it ring. Let it die out. A minute later, a voicemail came through. Her voice was trembling. "Ethan, I don't know why you're ignoring me, but I'm really worried. If I said something wrong, if I did something to upset you, can we please talk about it? Just call me back. Please." It was performative. I could hear it. She wasn't calling to confess. She was trying to get ahead of something. Trying to control the story before I had a chance to speak. I didn't respond. I needed her to sit with it. With the silence. With the not knowing. Because that's what I'd been doing for weeks. The next day, she showed up at my place. I didn't expect it. She didn't knock at first. I just heard the quiet sound of movement outside the door. A soft rustling, keys maybe, hesitation. Then, finally, 3 knocks. Delicate. Familiar. I didn't move. More knocking. "Ethan," her voice said through the door. "I know you're home. Your car's out front." Still, I didn't move. I stayed in the hallway, silent, watching her shadow through the peephole. She waited another minute, then sighed. I don't know what's happening. Can we please talk?" I didn't open the door. She left. About an hour later, she texted again. "I don't understand why you're punishing me. Whatever this is, we can get through it. You're scaring me with how cold you're being." And that one hit me, the cold part. as if the absence of my affection was a bigger betrayal than everything she'd said about me. As if she was entitled to my warmth, even now. Still, I didn't answer. The next few days were a blur of silence on my end and noise from hers. Her messages bounced between confusion, guilt, and manipulation. 1 minute she was apologetic. If I hurt you, I'm sorry. I just need to understand what's happening. The next, defensive. You can't just shut down like this. It's not fair. Then tender. I love you, Ethan. Please don't give up on us. But I had already given up. I just hadn't said it out loud yet. By day 4, she sent something different. Not a message. A voice memo. I played it once. Just once. Her voice cracked in the middle. I don't know what you heard. I don't know what you think you know. But I swear, Ethan, I never meant to hurt you. I never wanted any of this to happen. I got overwhelmed. Confused. I was venting, that's all. I didn't mean the things I said. You have to believe me. But I didn't. Because now I knew the difference between confusion and calculation. And Madison wasn't confused. She was caught. What followed was a day of silence. From both of us. Felt strange. Like the eye of a storm. And in that silence, I started to feel the first twinges of guilt. Not for ignoring her, but for not confronting her. For letting it all hang in the air like smoke with no fire. I didn't owe her a platform. But maybe I owed myself a release. So I wrote a message. Took an hour to write 3 lines. I heard what you said at the cafe. Everything. You called me a placeholder. Said I was just safe until someone else committed. You don't need to explain. I get it now. I hovered over the send button. And then I didn't send it. Because it felt too clean. Too controlled. Like an exit line in a movie. And this wasn't a movie. This was real. Raw. Personal. So instead, I let her stew. And that night she called again. I answered. Her voice cracked immediately. Ethan? Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you for picking up. I've been losing my mind. Can we please talk? I didn't say anything. She took my silence as permission. Okay. Look. She started exhaling. I know you're hurt. I know something's wrong. But I need to know what you think happened. I heard you, I said quietly. She paused. Heard me? At the cafe, I continued. You were talking with your friends. You said I was just convenient. That I was a safe option. That you were waiting for someone better. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Ethan, I didn't interrupt you then, I said. But I'm talking now. Okay, she said quickly. I get it. You're angry. You're hurt. And I'm sorry. I really am. But it wasn't what it sounded like. You were describing our relationship as a backup plan. I was venting, she insisted. I was frustrated. I was trying to be funny, I guess. Or maybe I was just saying things I didn't mean. You've never vented about someone to a friend? Not like that, I said. Not about someone I claim to love. She went quiet. I heard her breathing, short and shaky, like she was trying to figure out which version of herself to present now. I was scared, she said finally. Scared about the future. About settling. About making a mistake. But that doesn't mean I don't care about you. I do. I love you. I closed my eyes. Madison, I said slowly, you don't treat people you love like a waiting room. You don't tell your friends you're holding out for someone better while you sleep next to me at night. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did, I replied. And that's the part you're not saying. You meant it. You just didn't think I'd find out. Another silence. Then, so what now? I didn't answer right away. I wanted to, but everything I felt was still a storm, and I wasn't ready to make final decisions in the middle of it. I don't know, I said, but I can't pretend I didn't hear what I heard. She tried again. We can work through this. We can go to therapy. I'll do whatever you want. I'll change. I wanted to scream, to ask her what she would even change from. This wasn't about behavior. It was about character. It was about truth. You didn't just make a mistake, I said. You made a blueprint, and you followed it. She started crying then. I didn't hang up. I just held the phone, listening. The sobs came in waves. Big, dramatic, maybe real, maybe not. I didn't know anymore. I'm sorry, she kept whispering. I'm so sorry. Eventually, I said what I needed to say. I don't need you to be sorry, I told her. I need you to be honest. But I don't think you know how to do that. I hung up. For the first time in days, I felt the tiniest bit lighter. Not healed, not even close, but lighter, like I had finally taken the first step back toward myself.